I was awakened by a focused gaze once again. As soon as I opened my eyes, I saw that familiar face with a strange smile on it. "Good morning, honey," he said. His sweetness was as dangerous as a snake, sending shivers down my spine. "Good morning. What would you like to eat today?" "Anything is fine." "How can anything be okay? You have to go to work, it's so hard to work." He chattered on. He threw off the blanket and got out of bed, not wearing any clothes. His perfectly maintained physique from years of exercise was flawless: broad shoulders, narrow waist, long legs, and he was wearing only a pair of underwear that I had bought for him. He realized I was staring at him, and he blushed slightly, flashing a quick smile at me. "Honey, are you thinking about something?" I choked and shook my head vigorously. He smirked, then picked up a bathrobe and left the room. He had never slept naked before, not even, afterwards. He would always insist on wearing pajamas to sleep. And he wouldn't flirt with me like this. After getting ready, I came out of the room, and I could hear him in the kitchen. He hurriedly said, "Honey, wait a moment, the noodles will be ready soon." I sat at the dining table, waiting for him. 1 minute later, a bowl of beef noodles was served. The beef had been stewed slowly by him last night, and it tasted great, with the soup full of flavor. He had never cooked before. After breakfast, I prepared to leave, and just before leaving, I cautiously mentioned, "Honey, your car, the repair shop said it can't be fixed and needs to be scrapped, okay?" He put my keys and phone in my bag, casually saying, "You can decide." Then he came over to kiss me.
"Goodbye.
"Honey, work hard today." I took my bag, smiled at him, and left. He had never kissed me before leaving. He had never called me honey either. A month ago, my husband had been in a car accident and had been in a coma for more than 20 days. When he woke up, he didn't recognize me. The doctors said it was a post-traumatic stress disorder due to head trauma, and it would need time and patience from the family for treatment. So, I tore up that divorce agreement and didn't bring up the past anymore. But I wasn't planning to start over. I had a lot of work, and I didn't get off work until 10 o'clock. The company had been co-founded by both of us, and in the beginning, we had shared both success and failure. Later, he asked me to resign and become a housewife, citing that I should rest at home to prepare for having children. I became a housewife for 3 years, during which I didn't get pregnant, and I lost both my career and my husband. Picking up these tasks again was challenging for me, especially considering the many personnel changes that had occurred in my absence. All the replacements were his trusted associates and the backbone of the company. I couldn't help but wonder if maybe he had been genuinely busy all those times he claimed to be busy. But forget it, I don't want to dwell on it. When I got home, the house was pitch black, lacking the warm light that used to be there, and there was no man in an apron waiting for me in the living room with a smile. My face instantly darkened, and several possibilities crossed my mind. Just as I was about to make a call, the front door opened with a clicking sound, and a man walked in. When he saw me standing in the room, he broke into a smile. "Honey, you're back. Have you eaten?" he asked. I asked in a cold tone, "Where did you go?" "I headed downstairs to go for a run." "You probably haven't eaten yet, so I'll warm up some food for you." He was in workout gear, with sweat dripping down his back and rosy cheeks. He didn't seem to be lying. After heating up the food for me, he didn't even take a shower. No matter how I tried to persuade him, he insisted on having dinner with me. "Don't be silly, go take a shower. You might catch a cold." "Having a cold is fine, he said with a mischievous smile. If I have a cold, my wife can stay home with me. I chuckled. Are you acting like a child? After I finished eating, he insisted on washing the dishes. I checked my emails for a while and then went to the bathroom. While I was halfway through my shower, he knocked on the door. I thought he needed something, so I opened the door, and he slipped in, completely naked. I blushed a bit and asked, "What are you doing?" "Taking a shower," he said matter-of-factly. "I don't want to catch a cold later." Then he pulled me under the water and said with a smile, "Let's shower together, honey, it's eco-friendly." I blushed even more. He had never played like this with me before. Afterward, he carried me back to the bed, carefully dried my hair, and teased me while doing it. So my hair dried, but I got wet again. I didn't understand why he had changed so drastically in just a few days, eagerly trying to please me. He was like a completely different person. I began to think that maybe my husband hadn't lost his memory at all, perhaps he had just become a different person. If he hadn't changed, there was only one possibility left: he was pretending, he knew the truth, and he was waiting to deliver a fatal blow to me. The thought made me break out in a cold sweat. "Honey," he said after we were done, snuggling up to me and giving me a kiss, holding me tightly. "Want to go to the bathroom?" I pushed him away. "You go first." He held me even tighter. "I like it this way." I said, "You again." He replied with an He playfully complained, "Don't kick me, honey, I might fall off the bed." Ouch, that hurts. His tone was so cute when he spoke, but his actions were sharp. He skillfully pinned my hands above me, and I couldn't move. I angrily cursed at him. My husband would never act like this, not even when we were newlyweds. The next morning, I left for work with a sore back and aching muscles. As soon as I arrived at the office, the private investigator I had hired sent me a photo. My husband had left the house. Normally, he would only stroll around the neighborhood, buy groceries, or go to the supermarket. But today, he took a ride into the city. The investigator reported the situation in real time. He entered the park and is sitting in a pavilion, waiting for someone. "It's not very crowded there, and there's not much cover around," the investigator said. "I can't get closer, so I might not be able to hear their conversation." Impressive, he was indeed experienced. "Wait a minute, two elderly people just entered the pavilion." I asked, "What?" "A man and a woman, they sat down across from your husband." Your husband said something, and the elderly couple seemed very emotional. They embraced each other, and all three of them started crying. Me? He sent me a photo, and indeed, it was my husband with two elderly people. I could swear I had never seen those two elderly people before. "Boss, I really don't think there's anything wrong with your husband. I've been following him for more than 10 days and haven't seen him meet anyone, let alone a lover." There was indeed a lover, but at this moment, she probably wouldn't dare to come and see him. I hung up the phone and started searching for exorcists online. In the afternoon, I called at the right time, and he was in the middle of his nap. I woke him up, and he sounded groggy and a little annoyed. "Honey, what's wrong?" he asked. My voice was icy. "You're only napping now? Where were you this morning?" It seemed like I had instantly startled him awake, and he stammered, I didn't go anywhere, just went to the supermarket for a while. I bought your favorite yogurt because it's on sale today, and I bought a lot of other things too." I responded with an "oh," and then said, "There's a company party tonight. Change into some nice clothes and come attend." I'll have the driver pick you up later. A party? What kind of clothes should I wear? There are some in the closet, just pick something. He said okay, and didn't hang up. I could hear his footsteps approaching the closet. But honey, his voice turned soft and gentle, there are so many clothes. I don't know which one to choose. Do a video call on the phone, and I'll help you pick. He obediently initiated a video call, placing his phone on the wardrobe and smiling into the camera. Honey, can you see? I cleared my throat and said, yes, I can. He was wearing only a pair of underwear. I closed the blinds in my office, took a sip of water to clear my throat, and instructed, the third shirt on your left, try that one. He took the shirt as per my instructions and started buttoning it. He looked so handsome that I couldn't resist taking several screenshots. Even though I disliked him, I had to admit that his appearance satisfied me. What about pants? His long fingers slid over the neatly hung trousers, just like they used to slide over me at night. Suddenly, I had a teasing thought and lowered my voice. Honey, why don't you take them off? He hesitated for a moment, and his fingers stopped. He raised his head to look at me. There was a hint of a smile in his eyes. I raised my chin and said, take them off. He pursed his lips, a bit embarrassed. Honey, this isn't appropriate. I want to see, I coquettishly pleaded, using the same tricks anyone would. He mumbled, but what if something happens later? You won't be here, and I don't like using my hands. In that case, I'll go back with the driver later. I seduced him, but you have to make me feel something first. He smiled, I don't have to undress to make you feel something. Arrogant. Do you doubt it? I waited expectantly. His fingers began to move. But suddenly, he laughed. Honey, you look so cute when you're so focused. I felt a bit annoyed. Hurry up. But then, a knocking sound suddenly interrupted us. I felt like a thief caught in the act, almost jumping out of my chair. I quickly closed my phone, calmed my nerves, and let the person in. My secretary came in to deliver some documents. Usually, she would wait for me to sign them before leaving, but today I sent her away without signing anything. By the time I picked up my phone again, he had already changed his clothes. Surprisingly, I felt a bit disappointed. In the evening, at 7:30, the driver picked him up and brought him to the company. I was waiting for him at the entrance to the parking lot. After the driver left, I took his hand and led him to my car. The outfit he had chosen was very stylish. I had it custom-made for him in Italy a few years ago, but he found it too flashy and had never worn it before. It wasn't quite suited to the old him, but it matched his current demeanor perfectly. Honey, you look so beautiful tonight, he said, touching my dress and acting affectionate without crossing any lines. Can I give you a kiss? Of course, why would you ask? I said, leaning in, and he left a gentle, innocent kiss on my lips. He smiled, I didn't want to mess up your makeup. Well, dear, do you want to, now? His eyes lit up. Now? Can I? Yes. He hesitated for a moment. But here. This is my private garage. No one will come here, and once I roll down the blinds, no one will see anything. He was getting excited. Honey, you're amazing. As he leaned in to kiss me, I didn't pull away. Honey. Yes? Promise me something, okay? Of course, anything. In reality, men's promises made in the heat of the moment were rarely kept. I hugged him tightly, licked his reddish earlobe, and whispered, "After we go up later, if anyone asks about you, just say you've lost your memory, and it might take a while to recover." "So, you've entrusted the company's management to me. Is that okay?" He stopped immediately. I could feel his excitement recede like a tide. He withdrew and said in a somewhat aggrieved voice, with a hint of coldness in his voice, "So you did this on purpose, just to give me the benefits of car sex, right?" "Of course it is, silly boy." Of course I wouldn't admit it, and my voice was even colder. "Do you think I'm the kind of person who uses sex to exchange for things?" He panicked when I got angry. "That's not what I meant, honey. You should know, I'll agree to anything you say, so you don't need to say it at a time like this." "I didn't say anything." He leaned over again, his voice soft and pleading. "Honey, don't be mad, okay? I was wrong, I'll never say that again." I was still sitting on his lap, and I could feel him rubbing against my thigh. "Honey, it is also apologizing to you. Don't you forgive me, and don't you forgive it either?" I still didn't say anything. He leaned over to kiss me, and when he saw that I didn't dodge, he took the opportunity to squeeze in, and even pretended to say, "Honey, we need to hurry up, or we'll be late." We were both a little disheveled when we finished. I took him up the private elevator to the office, changed into spare clothes, and then took him to the rooftop restaurant. Today is the company's 5th anniversary celebration, and he has no reason to be absent. Although I have made a major overhaul of the company, there are still a few high-level executives who hold shares in the company who are very dissatisfied with me. 2 days ago, they even came to me in person and told me to bring him to the event. It was still a threatening tone. Alas, my current position as CEO is really unjustifiable. When I came in with him, all the employees stood up and applauded. Those high-level executives with shares clapped especially hard. I took him on stage to give a speech, and I signaled him to say a few words as well. He smiled at everyone and said a few casual remarks. Afterwards, those high-level executives came over to toast him and asked him how his recovery was going and when he would be able to return to the company. He smiled and said in a clear voice, "I've always been here." Those high-level executives looked expectant, and I felt my heart tighten. He continued, "My wife is here, so I'm here." "Damn it, why do you have to breathe so hard when you speak?" Those executives looked surprised, and one of them couldn't help but speak out impatiently, "Weren't you?" Before he could finish his sentence, he was nudged by someone next to him. "Weren't you what? Weren't you the one who didn't like your wife very much?" My dear husband continued, "I had a car accident recently, and I've lost my memory. It might take a while to recover, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to rest. Therefore, I've entrusted all company matters, big or small, to my wife." The mouths of those executives couldn't close. He showed a hint of impatience. "Is there anything else? If not, I'd like to invite my wife to dance." Then he took my hand and we left. He had never invited me to dance before. I leaned on his shoulder as we swayed on the dance floor. He was being so obedient that I felt a bit bewildered. I always thought he was holding back for a big surprise. Now, I'm afraid that if I'm not killed by the big surprise, I'll be drowned by this gentle attack. "Honey," he asked softly in my ear, "what would you have done if I hadn't been obedient just now?" What would I have done? My secretary is standing by the stage, ready to take control. If anything went wrong, he would insert the USB drive into the computer and expose evidence of his affair. "I might not kill you, but I'll certainly tarnish your reputation." "I couldn't have done anything," I said, at most, I would have slept in a separate bed from you. He smiled and kissed my cheek. I'll give you whatever you want. I just want you to be with me. In that moment, I felt like my heart had been struck hard. I couldn't help but smile and say, why didn't I realize how much you loved me before? That's because the old me didn't have good taste. You're so amazing, how could I not love you? I stopped and stared into his eyes. That beautiful face I used to detest now seemed so unfamiliar. Honey, when did you start loving me again? I asked. He didn't love me before. If he hadn't lost his memory, he probably would have killed me the day he woke up. I remember when you first woke up, you resisted me a lot. You said you didn't know me and even refused to sleep with me. Suddenly, one day, you started helping me with household chores, without sneaking around on the internet or going out. You even willingly came back to the room to sleep with me. It was the day I woke up and saw you in a camisole nightgown cooking breakfast for me. I found it incredibly sexy, and that's when I fell in love with you. Of course, I didn't believe him. It was a joke. I had been cooking breakfast in a camisole nightgown for him for 3 years, and it hadn't changed his mind. How could he possibly love me now? The celebration was long and boring. Midway through, he and I sneaked out to get some fresh air and ran into someone. A woman. A woman who had clashed with me before, a woman who had shown me defiance. I held on to him, silently watching the woman approach. But my husband seemed oblivious, complaining about how awful the music inside was, his gaze fixed entirely on me. He had never cared about the music around him before. The woman came closer, realized he hadn't noticed her at all, and called him with a pitiful look of grievance. Only then did he notice the approaching woman and raised an eyebrow before looking at me. The look in his eyes was the same as the one he gave me when he encountered an unfamiliar acquaintance while leaving the house, a look that pleaded for help. I introduced him as usual. Honey, this is your former mistress. He was startled. Honey, I don't know her. I know you don't, I said with a smile, then turned to the woman. Sorry, my husband has amnesia now. The woman immediately burst into tears. I let go of his arm and said, you two talk. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my waist and pulled me back, holding me tightly and looking serious. You stay right here, he said to the woman. What do you want? Liam, I miss you. He smiled somewhat disdainfully. Miss me? Where were you when I had the accident? Her eyes welled up with tears, and she did look like the type he would like. I fainted when I heard the news and stayed in the hospital for over 10 days. He snorted, held me close, and said, Honey, let's go inside. I'd rather listen to the chaotic music in there than listen to this woman's nonsense. The woman quickly held him back, tears rolling down her cheeks. I was hospitalized to protect our child, Liam. I'm pregnant with your child. He froze. I froze too. This was bad. During his coma, she never showed up, and I thought she had abandoned him, so I didn't pay any attention. I didn't expect her to show up now, and the timing was quite convenient. It could test whether he had really lost his memory or if he was just fooling me. I stared at his face, not missing any details. But there was only a hint of annoyance and impatience on his face, almost fleeting. Is it mine? He asked. The woman cried even harder. What are you asking? Of course, it's yours. What do you want, then? The woman didn't answer and glanced timidly at me. What are you looking at her for? He said coldly. Don't even think about it. I will never divorce her to be with you. I can't even remember who you are now, and I have no feelings for you. The woman stared at him blankly. as if she didn't understand what he was saying. To be honest, I felt a little sorry for her. I won't acknowledge the child. Honey, how do you want to handle this? I glanced at him. His expression was serious and didn't seem like an act. The child is innocent. If you're willing to have the baby, I will provide you with child support, but we won't acknowledge this child. He agreed. Honey, do you have a check? Give it to her. It was like dismissing a beggar. The woman almost collapsed, her voice filled with despair. Liam. I called a security guard from nearby to take her away. She was unwilling, trying to rush towards us with great force, and I was worried about her unborn child. He, on the other hand, didn't even glance at her, but pulled me inside. My husband is a real scoundrel. Afterward, I couldn't focus on anything. He was afraid that I would be angry, so he didn't leave my side all night, trying to soothe me in various ways. The employees teased us, saying they didn't expect our relationship to be so good. After it was over, we went back together. As soon as I got in the car, I closed my eyes to pretend to rest, and he sat beside me, gently holding my hand. Honey, please don't ignore me. That woman is a bad person, and I don't like her. I will never betray you in the future, I promise. Please don't be angry. I didn't respond to him all night. The next morning, he was even more servile than usual, serving me tea and water, and even brushing my teeth for me. When I asked him to change his clothes and accompany me somewhere, he didn't hesitate. I took him to the Industrial and Commercial Bureau. He dozed off in the car and woke up somewhat dazed, suddenly exclaiming, "Wifey." I was startled. What's wrong? He squinted at the window, then smiled, "It's nothing. I thought you were taking me to get a divorce. You scared me." I chuckled, "You really don't want to divorce me that much?" He nodded vigorously. "But I still don't feel secure." Honey. Don't make promises to me. You made plenty of promises before we got married. In that case, what can I do to make you feel secure? Transfer the shares to me. He hesitated. I thought he would at least make a joke, but he immediately opened the car door and got out. Honey, I'll give you whatever you want. I completed the formalities with mixed emotions. It felt like I was in a dream. As we left, he held on to me like a newlywed bride. Honey, I have nothing now. Please don't abandon me. My husband, he couldn't be this cute. To reward him, I bought a whole set of adult toys online, and both of us eagerly waited for the delivery every day. On the day the courier arrived, I went downstairs to pick it up myself. When I entered the door, he wasn't waiting for me at the entrance. I called his name several times, but there was no response. I carried the box into the bedroom, and he was on the phone, looking gloomy. I hadn't seen this expression in a long time, so I felt a pang of unease. The next moment, he abruptly hung up the phone, walked over to me, and before I could sense anything was wrong, he grabbed my throat, pressed me against the wall, his face filled with anger. "You vile woman, you dare to come back." I couldn't breathe, the pain brought tears to my eyes. Honey, what are you saying? I just went downstairs. How could you? He tightened his grip, gritting his teeth. You tampered with my car, destroyed evidence while I was unconscious, took my company shares, and even killed my child. I never knew you could be so wicked. You disgust me. I didn't. I struggled. I never touched your car. That woman aborted the child herself, and you said you didn't acknowledge that child. Then, like a balloon being punctured, All the emotions on his face vanished in an instant, leaving only confusion. "Wifey, what's going on?" The pressure on my throat disappeared, and I pushed him away and tried to run, but he grabbed my wrist. "Wifey, what's happening? Don't touch me!" I shouted, tears streaming down my face. "You're the one who disgusts me. All these years, what have you done that's not disgusting? You even try to blame me for the consequences of your own actions. Why didn't you just die?" He froze. Finally, unable to contain myself any longer, I burst into tears. I hadn't cried in 3 years. I thought I didn't care anymore, and I thought I could endure it until the day I died, but now I felt so wronged. Why couldn't he just keep pretending like he had for the past couple of weeks? "Wifey, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." He pulled me into his arms, soothing me softly. "It's my fault, all my fault. Don't cry, your tears are breaking my heart." I choked on my own tears. And just like that, he changed again. The next day, I took him to the psychiatric hospital. "Doctor, I suspect my husband is mentally unstable." He stood there looking helpless, not saying a word. I described the situation to the doctor, and as he listened, his brow furrowed deeper. "Wifey, I choked you and cursed at you yesterday? That's impossible." "Doctor, listen to this," I said. "He doesn't remember any of it. Look at my neck, there are marks." He also leaned in to look, his expression full of regret. "Oh my God, how could I have done such a thing?" I strongly insisted that the doctor keep him in the hospital because I was afraid the next time it might be more than just choking. He was on the verge of tears. "Wifey, please don't leave me here. Mental hospitals are terrifying, I don't want to stay here. I'm not sick. You promised you wouldn't abandon me." The doctor explained from the side, "This isn't a mental hospital, it's a therapeutic facility." He clung to me, wailing, "Wifey." After some commotion, the doctor suggested that I talk to him first because admitting him might not be conducive to treatment. I took him to the hospital lawn, intending to console him, but his phone rang. He glanced at the phone, his face turning even worse, and immediately answered it. "Hello? It's me." "What?" After hanging up, his expression became even more dire. "Honey, what's wrong?" He looked at me, his expression lost. "Wifey, I'm dead." "What?" I stood up. Doc. He pulled me down. "I'm not your husband." "Are you his split personality?" "No." He hesitated. "I don't know how to explain, but listen to me, I'm not crazy. I'm not your husband, but I also had a car accident, became a vegetable, lying in the hospital, and then I woke up and became your husband." I laughed. "So, you mean your soul attached itself to my husband?" He nodded. "I think so." I stood up again. Doc. He pulled me, frowning. "I'm not making this up. Don't you believe me?" "Can I believe it?" "You can check right now. I'm lying in the room next to where your husband used to stay, a 24-year-old guy who just graduated from college. The last time your people tracked me, you saw that elderly couple, they were my parents." He said a lot in one breath, leaving me completely bewildered. "So, it's been you all this time?" I asked. "Yes, it was until last night when he emerged and hurt you." "When did you die?" "It was last night, after he appeared." "A near-death experience?" So, my husband is really dead now? He nodded. It seems so. I had nothing to say but wanted to celebrate with fireworks. We talked on the lawn of the sanatorium for the rest of the afternoon. Although what he said was hard to accept, this miracle was the best gift I had ever received in my life. In the evening, we went to the hospital. He said his final
goodbye
and cried bitterly with his parents. It really didn't look fake. After he finished crying, he explained the future arrangements to his parents in detail. To spare them from grief, he strongly requested that they delegate everything to a management company. The elderly couple was sad, but they also felt grateful for a second chance, and they wouldn't let go of his hand no matter what. At least their child was still here. It almost made me want to cry. He wiped away his tears, brought his parents over, and introduced them with a smile. "Mom, Dad, this is my wife." I was stunned. Perhaps he had already told them because the elderly couple didn't seem surprised at all. They greeted me with smiles and complimented me on my beauty, saying I looked very virtuous. I was a little awkward at first, but I relaxed after chatting for a while. They were very kind elderly people. That's why they raised such a lovable son. The elderly couple went to handle hospital procedures, and I waited with him at the entrance. "Tonight, you should go back with your parents," I said. "They still seem emotionally unstable." He seemed hesitant. "But, wifey, I want to be with you." I laughed. "You're calling me wifey again?" It was only at that moment that I suddenly realized that I had been sleeping with a stranger for over 10 days. He looked a bit upset. "Why can't I call you that? I am your husband." I'm speechless. At first, he actually wanted to go home to be with his parents, but after I said this, he insisted on coming home with me and shamelessly wanted to sleep with me. I couldn't chase him away, so I had to take a pillow to the guest room, and he followed wearing only his underwear. "Wifey." He stood at the door, looking helpless. "Don't you want me anymore?" It's really strange. I didn't open the door all night, thinking he would go back to sleep on his own. But when I opened the door in the morning, I found out that he had slept at the door all night, freezing. I quickly brought him back to the room, took his temperature, and gave him water. His eyes were a bit swollen, and he looked pitiful. "Wifey, don't you like me?" I glanced at the thermometer, and he had a slight fever. "Drink some water," I gave him a large glass of hot water. "Are you feeling uncomfortable? Do you need to go to the hospital? It's so uncomfortable, and my wife doesn't want me." He looked miserable. I rubbed my temples. Alex Lee, a graduate of B University, a musician in a band, a well-known internet broadcaster with fans all over the country, and you've dated 360 women. Why do you insist on staying? Clearly, he was a playboy, but in front of me, he had acted like a shy rabbit for more than 10 days. "Wow, did you investigate me?" He grinned. "Because you're a wealthy woman, and I want to be your little kept man." Cut it out. Even if you don't have Alex's face, my husband's face is enough to pick up girls. Besides, your skills in playing the drums and singing won't disappear because of a physical condition. And your parents are retired high-ranking officials. You're basically a second-generation rich kid. Do I really matter that much? Then I just like you. Why does there have to be a reason? I won't leave. After all, I'm your husband now. We have a marriage certificate, recognized by the state. If you bully me, I'll have my parents come. I gave him a sidelong glance. Come for what? To scold me. If you're bullying me, it must be because I'm not doing well enough. I snorted. Smooth talker. I don't care. You promised you wouldn't abandon me. I remained silent. He blinked his eyes. Wifey, come to bed with me, I'm cold. I was afraid he was really cold, so I sat on the bed. But before I could settle in, he pulled me onto the bed by my belt. What are you doing? His eyes flashed with mischief. Darling, you don't measure a temperature like this. What? Hey, you. Do you like your husband's thermometer? Get out of here. I couldn't believe the way he was trying to measure his temperature. By the way, wifey, did our online order arrive?